This is the Championship Rounds Podcast YouTube channel, and these are our top 5 UFC fights of all time. At number 5, it's Jon Jones vs Alexander Gustafsson at UFC 165. At this point in Jon Jones' career, he completely dominated any opponent he came up against, and no one seemed to pose a real threat to his record. All the experts predicted similar success leading up to this fight against Gustafsson, and Gustafsson came out early and let the world know that Jon Jones would have to be on top of his game to get past him, becoming the first man to ever take Jon Jones down. It was a striking purist stream, as each round was very close. After the third round, Jones was down on the judges' scorecards, and Gustafsson was looking set to complete the upset. Jones came out in the fourth and rocked Gustafsson with a spinning back elbow, and used the momentum to control the fight to the finish, and replying with a takedown of his own. Jones won by decision, but it is often debated and is also considered one of the closest title fights in UFC history. At number 4, it's Dan Henderson vs Shogun at UFC 139. This fight ended with two men wearing shorts stained with each other's blood, laying on a canvas coated in blood, sweat and tears. For 25 minutes, these two men traded punch for punch and kick for kick. This fight was entertaining from start to finish, and was thrilling as both men traded on the feet and on the ground. From the first to the last second, there was always the possibility of either man being one punch away from unconsciousness. It was an all-out slugfest, with both men weathering periods of onslaught. Both men put forward displays of pure heart. Henderson took the win by decision, but it's not the win or the loss that will be remembered, but the performance of both men in arguably the most entertaining fight in the sport's history. At number 3, we've got Cub Swanson vs Doo Choi at UFC 206. This fight is one of the craziest and most entertaining fights of all time, with some of the best shots seen in an octagon. Even the last 10 seconds of the fight are more entertaining than some 5-round fights, as it saw Swanson's momentum from a cartwheel kick throw him to the ground before springing to his feet and throwing a huge long-range left, accompanied with a spinning elbow that sends Choi to the canvas, which saw Swanson finish the fight by dropping hammer fists. When the fight finished, it was clear to see that both fighters knew they'd been a part of something extremely incredible, as Swanson raised his arms and head in a knelt position, taking in the roars and the ovation from the crowd and the world watching at home. The respectful response from MMA fighters around the world was paramount, with fighters like Daniel Cormier and Tyron Woodley calling it a certainty for fight of the year. At number 2, we have Robbie Lawler vs Rory MacDonald 2 in UFC 189. It was the first defense of Lawler's welterweight title and the rematch following a split decision win for Lawler. The first round was a fairly even one, with MacDonald being cut badly by Lawler's strikes. MacDonald pushed through the punishment displayed all over his face and kept moving forward like a zombie and swinging at Lawler and landing. Lawler picked his shots well, capitalizing by landing on the already damaged face of MacDonald. MacDonald turned the momentum by landing a damaging head kick and shots up against the fence in the third. The fourth round was controlled by MacDonald with a striking clinic and flurries of punches, elbows and kicks. Blood was pouring from both their faces as the round came to a close. This created an iconic moment in UFC history, as both warriors stood in the center of the octagon, staring at each other through a sea of blood. Going into the fifth round, it was either man's fight to win, and Lawler dropped MacDonald with a perfect strike to the nose. The fight, of course, won fight of the night, but Dana White described it as the fight of the ever. And at number 1, we have The Ultimate Fighter 1's finale, Griffin vs Bonner. This fight was by no means a technical masterpiece, but is undoubtedly one of the most thrilling and entertaining wars in the history of combat sports, displaying incredible amounts of heart, spirit and a never back down attitude. It seemed as if any time a good shot would land, it would be returned in spectacular fashion. This fight is the definition of non-stop action. The only time either fighter took a breath was in between rounds. The first round finished with a standing ovation from the crowd. You couldn't write a script that was better than this fight. The two warriors went the distance and Griffin took the win by decision. The fight was so great that the UFC made the decision right there in the octagon to give both fighters a 6-figure contract, despite the concept of the Ultimate Fighter being that only the winner gets the contract. Not only was this fight a special one purely from an entertainment stance, but it was arguably the most important fight in UFC history. It was the first time the UFC was streamed live on cable television. Viewership grew as the fight went on. Dana White has often joked about the possibility of living on the streets if it weren't for the success of this fight, as it propelled the company into the commercial giant it is today. Before this fight, the UFC was starting to die out with a whimper, and this fight caught the world's attention and launched mixed martial arts into the mainstream. So that's our top 5 UFC fights of all time. Did we miss any? Please let us know in the comments any fights that you think should have made it into the top 5. As always, please like, subscribe, comment and share, and that's going to do it for this one.